You know how when you follow a recipe, you mix some ingredients, follow the steps, and you get, say, a cake? Well, what if someone could sneak in a malicious ingredient, one that hijacks the recipe itself and forces it to do something totally different? That's really the core idea behind one of the oldest and most dangerous threats in cybersecurity. And believe me, this isn't some theoretical recipe for disaster. It has some very, very real consequences. 37 million. That's not just some random number I pulled out of a hat. That's how many customers had their personal data exposed in a massive data breach at Panera Bread. Yep, the restaurant chain. 37 million people who just wanted a sandwich and ended up with their private info floating around out there. So how on earth did that happen? You'd probably think a breach that huge must have been caused by some new, super sophisticated cyber weapon, right? Well, the shocking part is, the bug that brought Panera to its knees is one of the most well-known, well-documented security flaws in history. Which, just leads to an even bigger question. How does this keep happening? All right, to get that answer, we've got to look at exactly what went down in that 2018 Panera breach. It's a perfect, almost textbook case of what happens when a simple, known flaw is just left to fester. Okay, just look at this timeline. A security researcher finds this critical vulnerability and does the right thing. They tell Panera about it privately back in August of 2017. But then nothing. For 8 full months, the vulnerability wasn't fixed. That's 8 months where the digital front door was left wide open, long after someone had literally handed them the key and told them to lock it. And we're not talking about trivial stuff here. This is the core of your digital identity. Your full name, email, phone number, even your birthday. This is exactly the kind of info that fuels identity theft and all sorts of scams. And it was all just sitting there, exposed, because of an issue that was completely fixable. So that's the damage. But how does an attacker actually do this? The flaw behind the Panera breach is called an injection attack. Now, it might sound super technical, but the idea behind it is surprisingly simple. It's all about tricking a system from the inside. So, an injection flaw happens when a program basically gets confused. It can't tell the difference between plain old data it's supposed to handle and a command it's supposed to follow. Think of it like this. Imagine you ask a robot librarian to go get a book for you. That's a normal request. But with an injection attack, you slyly slip a second command into your request. You tell the robot, hey, go get me that book, and while you're at it, unlock the main vault. The robot, not knowing any better, just follows the instructions. Let's look at what this looks like in the real world with some code. On the left, you've got a normal login. The database is asked to find a user where the username is Bob and the password matches. Standard stuff. But now, look at the injected query on the right. An attacker puts in admin, followed by 2 dashes as the username. See, in the database language, SQL, those 2 little dashes mean ignore everything that comes after this point on this line. So the entire password check just gets commented out. It's completely ignored. And just like that, the system lets them in as the admin. They've got the keys to the kingdom. Now, the Panera breach was what we call a SQL injection because it targets a SQL database. But this isn't a one-trick pony, not at all. Injection is a whole family of vulnerabilities, and they can target all sorts of different parts of a system. So, while SQL injection, the one we just talked about, hits databases, attackers can use the same fundamental trick on other things. A command injection can target a computer's entire operating system. NoSQL injection goes after newer types of databases. An LDAP injection, that can trick the servers that handle your logins. The target might change, but the basic idea is always the same. Trick the system by hiding a command where it expects to see plain old data. To really get a feel for how dangerous this can be, look at this example of command injection. An app might have a simple tool to ping a server to see if it's online. An attacker could put in a normal IP address, but then add a semicolon and a second command. And that second command, rm-rf/, is basically the digital self-destruct button. On a Linux server, it means forcefully delete every single file you can find. It is absolutely catastrophic. Game over. Okay, that is definitely the scary part. But here's the good news. This is a solved problem. We know exactly how to defend against these attacks. So how do you actually build that digital fortress to keep these injection attacks out for good? There are 4 really critical lines of defense here. But the most important one, the absolute number one thing, is the first. Use parameterized queries. It's a way of writing code that builds a solid wall between your commands and any data that comes from a user. After that, it's really about good habits. You have to validate all input because you just can't trust it. You apply the principle of least privilege, so even if an attacker gets in, the damage they can do is tiny. And finally, you escape special characters, which basically defangs them and turns them into harmless text.
And here is a perfect visual of that key defense in action. In the vulnerable code up top, see how the customer ID is just dropped right into the middle of the command? That's the hole the attacker exploits. But now, look at the secure code below. The command uses a question mark as a placeholder. The database gets the command first, with the placeholder locked in. Then, the customer ID is sent separately, as pure data. The database knows to never, ever treat that data as part of the command. That simple change prevents the entire attack.
So all of this leads us to the biggest, most important question of all. If we know what injection is, and we have these clear, effective ways to stop it, why does this threat stick around? Why are we still seeing huge breaches from this old school bug? And I want to be clear, this isn't just a rare mistake. According to the Open Web Application Security Project, or OWASP, injection flaws were still found in 19% of all applications they tested in 2021. That's nearly 1 in 5. It's not some obscure edge case. It is a widespread, stubborn problem. So why? Well, there are a few big reasons. A lot of companies are still running on ancient legacy systems with tons of old, vulnerable code that's a nightmare to fix. Sometimes it's as simple as developers not being trained on secure coding. And as tech evolves, we get new targets like APIs and NoSQL databases, which just gives attackers new places to try the same old tricks. And honestly, in the modern race to get products out the door, speed and new features often win out over the slow, careful work of security. This story of injection attacks, it really isn't just about one bug or one bad recipe. It's about the messy, complicated reality of how software actually gets made. This flaw is known, it's understood, and it's preventable. And yet, it still causes incredible damage. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other simple, known risks are hiding just under the surface of the apps and websites we trust and use every single day?